Welcome to the It's in Queens podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Simmons, and this is the only podcast that focuses on my borough of Queens. This podcast comes to you each week thanks to the Queens Economic Development Corporation and the Queens Tourism Council. Together, they showcase Queens as a destination with something for everyone, whether you live here, you are visiting, or you work here. Nonprofit organizations play a vital role in shaping and strengthening neighborhoods, particularly here in Queens. These organizations are at the heart of community progress, driving economic development, providing critical services, and creating opportunities that improve lives. And one standout example is the Greater Jamaica Development Corporation. The organization focuses on revitalizing and building economic growth in Southeast Queens. From promoting local businesses to leading infrastructure projects, the organization has been pivotal in enhancing the area's vibrancy and sustainability. Its efforts have made a tangible difference in creating jobs, fostering entrepreneurship, and improving quality of life for residents and visitors alike. My guest this week is someone deeply involved in this work, Pat Robinson, a C-suite executive at the organization. Pat collaborates with leadership on operational planning, budgeting, and organizational strategy. And beyond her role with the organization, her career spans 2 decades in media as an executive at Hot 95, WBLS, and WLIB, where she rose to Vice President of Human Resources and Community Engagement. And she also currently hosts Conversations on the Block, which airs on multiple radio stations like WCBS-FM, 94.7 The Block, and WFAN Sports Radio on Sunday mornings. I recently had the pleasure of meeting Pat in person when I attended one of her radio show tapings. So for this week, I thought I'd have a little fun. I'd turn the tables and interview her. Here's that conversation. Pat Robinson, welcome to the It's in Queens podcast.
Wonderful. So excited to be here.
So let's start off by finding more about you and your background, where you grew up. Talk a little about that.
Yeah. So, I used to tell the story about when people ask me where I grew up. So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, spent the most of my life there. And one of the things that I've learned to tell differently, and as a part of getting older and appreciating life a little bit more, is I used to always say, grew up in Brooklyn in this low income housing area, right? But the fact of the matter is that I grew up in a loving home, surrounded around people who believed in me. And as a result, I was able to have like this foresight vision on how to make the best of any situation, no matter what environment I've been in. So I grew up in Brooklyn all of my life. So everything was born and raised in Brooklyn. And then over the last 16 years, I invested in my first home in Queens. And so now I am a resident of Queens.
And what led you to your role as the Chief Administrative Officer at the Greater Jamaica Development Corporation?
Yeah. So interesting, because I spent about 20 plus years working in broadcast media for significant radio stations under the umbrella of MS Communications, which was Hot 97, WBLS, KISS FM, CD 101.9. So I had a wonderful career in radio. And when COVID happened, it was a time to sit down and reflect. And we actually also had management changing. So at that point, I decided, maybe it's time for me to look out for something that is within the area in which I live and I could serve. But I have to tell you, after being at a job for 20 plus years, it's very scary to jump back into the job market. And so I just did my due diligence and I said, where would I like to work? I know I want to work in the vicinity of where I live, but I didn't know too much about the organizations that had opportunities. So I had 2 opportunities present themselves. One was Greater Jamaica Development Corporation, and one was another autism nonprofit. And I did my research on GJDC and decided to come here. Honestly, I was hired as an HR manager and within 4 months promoted to Chief Administrative Officer. So I could tell I was on the right path.
And that's what happens when it's a job well done.
Yes.
So for our listeners who may not know much about the Greater Jamaica Development Corporation, talk a little bit about what the organization does and maybe some of the projects or initiatives that you're currently focused on, how you serve the community.
Yeah. So Greater Jamaica, I've been here for about 2.5 years, going on 3 years, but it was formed in 1967 and is one of the nation's first community development corporations. It has become a model for economic transformation. It encourages responsible private and public investment in Jamaica, Queens, to enhance the quality of life for residents. And we do that through a number of ways. We own and operate several commercial projects, garages, lots that serve downtown Jamaica, a public parking system. We focus on project design, pre-development planning, administration of small business loan funds, which is a huge nugget for us in terms of serving our small business community, administration of government programs in industrial retention and commercial revitalization, and a host of other amazing programs. But one of the pillars of our organization is the Business Services Group. We are a CDFI, and so we have a revolving loan fund that operates, and our job there is to be a story-based lender for small businesses who may not be able to access capital, be it whether their credit or their history may have blemishes on it. We do that through a number of ways. So we offer flexible financing up to $300,000. And we do that through lines of credit, term loans, invoice financing. And one of the things that you probably have heard over the last several years is all of these opportunities for MWBE. So
Hmm.
one of the biggest gaps here is that you have these MWBE service providers who may win these contracts, but then they need capital to actually bridge to get the job going. So this is where GJDC steps in and is a major part of this. We also have grant programs that we do periodically, and we love to do that. And then we're an industrial business service provider, just helping people to navigate government and support troubleshooting issues to make sure that they are understanding how to, access grants, understand incentives, look at real estate assistance and any legal assistance around those areas. So that's just a small snippet of what we do. And if you go to our website at www.gjdc.org, you'll also see that we do some amazing signature events where we co-collaborate with partners around the community.
So you live in Queens, you work in Queens,
And I
how,
play in
and you
Queens.
play in Queens. How has all of this influenced your perspective on community development and the work that you do?
Yeah. And, one of the things that I really have come to appreciate is the fact that I am a homeowner in Queens and that I live here. So turning my lens and putting all of my experience into the place in which I, as said, live, work, and play means a lot to me. I'm also very cognizant of my neighbors, businesses, and it gives me an opportunity to the spaces in which I am in to influence and to tell the story about why it's so important to focus on the resources to bridge the gap. So I'm just really excited about this chapter of being a homeowner, being a community leader in the place in which I live, and really looking forward to all of the investments that are happening in Queens.
So I met you recently at your radio show, a taping for Conversations
Yes.
on the Block on 94.7. What inspired you to start this show? What do you enjoy most about hosting it?
Yeah, this one was so as at that point where I had left radio and took the job here at Greater Jamaica Development, I thought my career in radio was over because I did work behind the scenes as Vice President of Human Resources and Community Engagement. And lo and behold, when I got the job at GJDC, a colleague said, "Hey, Pat, I took a new job at Odyssey, which has over 250 stations across the world, and I have this job, this opening at 94.7 The Block and for a public affairs host." And my immediate reaction was like, I've never been on the air. I've just worked behind the scenes. And he says, "No, you've been doing this work for a really long time. And I think that it's time to give you a platform." So, the opportunity was grand. I love it. I've been now a little bit over 2.5 years. So my tenure on radio is running with my tenure here at GJDC. And I want to make sure that the platform is used properly. So I do have the ability to talk to business leaders, organizations, everyday people, just spreading awareness about everything that is happening across the tri-state and Connecticut. So this is not a show that is solely focused in Queens, not at all. I am tackling issues from education, from domestic violence, from foster care, artistry, music, culture, lifestyles, all sorts of things that impact the everyday lives of people. And I really enjoy it because I'm learning a lot as well.
So tell me about a memorable story or two or a guest that you've had on Conversations on the Block.
Yeah, in retrospect, in reflection, it's so awesome because as I sit back and I look, I'm like, wow, you're like literally at the microphone with like CEOs, COOs, like this is amazing. But I probably would say one of the most recent memorable ones was I interviewed a young man by the name of Dylan. And Dylan is D for dyslexia, which is his organization. And he told a story about how he was misdiagnosed for probably over 15 years with a ADHD diagnosis, and it was really dyslexia, and how he had been medicated for years, treating one thing, and it was another thing, and all of the changes that he went through as a young man, and how he has overcome that and has now become like this national speaker to make sure from an advocacy standpoint that people are not only leaning into the medical care and understanding how to diagnose people, but then just the overcoming of the actual illness that he had anticipated. But that's just one of many. I have so many, I probably can't remember, but one good thing is that I enjoy is that I have now become my radio spiel has now rolled into my everyday spiel. So if I'm having a general conversation with someone, I find myself asking so many questions. I want to know everything. And so that's a good part because I'm more interested in what people have to say, not just a quick bypass. I really want to get down to the nitty-gritty of it.
I'm the same way as you because when I have these conversations, then I take away something that then I reflect when I have the next episode of my radio show talking about the
Yeah.
conversations I've had and how it relates to current events. So
Yeah.
that's really great to hear someone else go through the same thing. What do you want listeners to take away from each one of your episodes?
Yeah, first of all, I'm so appreciative if they even find value in tuning in, and I take this responsibility seriously. I will say that when I first started the show, I was so afraid about how I sounded on the show. So I spent the first 6 months trying to get acclimated to being on the microphone and understanding that my voice was out there. And then I just had to sit down and I'm like, you know what, Pat? Why do you listen to people? Why do you watch TV? What is it that keeps you engaged? And I'm like, it's when they tell you the story. It's when the story makes sense to you. It's when you can relate. And so I changed my focus on how I interview. And I said, if I was the audience member, what will make me want to stay? Also, what are some of the questions that I would want to ask? And so I approach it with the audience in mind first, is if the audience were there with me, what questions would they want me to ask? So I always want people to walk away either learning something, ready to take an action, ready to advocate, or ready to share, right? Or do some additional research. So every guest that I have in mind is really focused on what information can I bring forth to either educate, inform, or help them to take an action. And so I really enjoy it.
So let's get back to your day job.
Yeah.
In your experience, what are some of the challenges and opportunities facing Queens right now, particularly in the Jamaica area?
Yeah, so the job that I do as chief administrative officer is a grand one. I serve right next to an amazing leader, Justin K. Rogers, who's the president and CEO, who is a tremendous leader. So I couldn't ask for a better second chapter of my career than the one that I have right now. I would probably say one of the most prevalent challenges in Queens, which we hear about, is affordable housing, right? And small businesses being able to survive, right? And accessing capital so that their businesses can thrive. We do a number of things in my role from an internal perspective. There's continuity, business strategy, collaborations, partnerships. I do all of that internally, and then oversight of the workforce, making sure that our workforce is, all of the cylinders are fired up. But then there's an external component in terms of visibility, our engagement, speaking engagements, making sure that we're telling our story, representing the organization in a very amazing way. We do have this beautiful co-working space called the Greater Nexus, which opened up about 2.5 years ago, over 10,000 square feet, a technology hub for entrepreneurs. It is a tech space, the first of its kind in Southeast Queens. So just making sure that we are doing our due diligence to keep that at the forefront. So tech is really important to make sure that we are not missing the boat on that, having conversations, and also just bringing in really strategic partnerships, working with universities. We have an amazing relationship with York College. I actually serve on the board of directors there, so lending my expertise there. We also have an amazing relationship with St. John's University, connecting the resources and the students there to provide small business entrepreneurs consulting from a purview of, hey, let's look at what your business is doing. Here's an opportunity for us to do a SWOT analysis. Here's some recommendations from a fresh set of eyes from a student perspective. So we do all of these amazing collaborations and partnerships. And the ultimate goal is that our small business community will really see us as a resource, right? So we're more than commercial buildings, we're more than parking lots and co-working spaces, but we are truly a resource trying to make sure that there's sustainability, not only in the business community, but the place in which we live. We're seeing the landscape really transform economically.
So I know we only have a minute or two left, but I'd love to know more about how you see the role of community media, such as your radio show, in
Mhm.
helping to strengthen and inform neighborhoods.
Yeah. So very important because really important to first be connected in it. So I'm in a very unique space where I do have this microphone outward, right? And then I serve in the community in my role. So I utilize the both to make sure that there's an intersection of what I am talking about. So I utilize what I'm learning from the outside and I bring it back to my organization. And I'm like, these conversations are things that we should focus on. And then I look at my organization and I'm like, man, I need to find guests that we can mirror what we're doing so that they can see roles of what we're doing in terms of Queens and terms of economic transformation. So I think there's a sweet intersection of a person's job in media, not from a braggadocious standpoint, but just really making sure that we're taking the opportunity to tell the story, to bring the resources from mental health, everything that we can. It's important for us to have really good, comprehensive conversations and really bring community leaders to the table.
And finally, what keeps you motivated both in your work at the Greater Jamaica Development Corporation and with the radio show?
Yeah, as long as you let a girl be a girl and let her dress fashionably, I'll do work all day. Just please don't interfere with my fashion time. But no, I'm motivated because I get to see results, right? And I think it's important for me as an African American woman to set a standard of excellence in everything that I do. And I know I have a really big audience of people who look to me for advice and guidance, younger folks, both young and female and male. And they're always looking for a role model of excellence. So my job is to continue to be a standard of excellence, both for Greater Jamaica Development Corporation, as well as myself, as well as for Odyssey from a media perspective, and really just to connect the dots. And that's how we truly will make change.
And I know you gave the website a little earlier, but please repeat the website and also let our listeners know when they can hear your show each week.
Yeah. So if you want to learn more about Greater Jamaica Development, feel free to go to www.gjdc.org. I know that's a mouthful, gjdc.org. And if you want to listen to me on the radio, you can tune in on Sunday mornings on 94.7 The Block at 8:30 to 9:30. But guess what? This show also airs on WFAN, it airs on 1027, and it airs on CBS FM, all under the Odyssey brand. So if you do not have a radio, you can download the Odyssey app and tune in on Sundays at the time of 8:30.
And that's also where I listen to a lot of my radio on the Odyssey app. Thanks again to Pat Robinson for joining me this week. Her passion for community development and empowerment truly shines through, not just in her work with the Greater Jamaica Development Corporation, but also in her commitment to amplifying important voices and stories through radio. Community radio is such a vital resource. It serves as a platform for conversations that matter, shining a spotlight on the people and organizations working tirelessly to support and uplift our neighborhoods. Pat's show is an incredible example of this, highlighting local leaders, nonprofits, and initiatives that often don't get the attention they deserve. And by dedicating time to these stories, Pat is providing a public service, connecting listeners with the resources, opportunities, and inspiration they might need. I encourage you to take some time and tune in and listen to her show. It's a testament to how media can make a meaningful difference in our communities. If you're looking for something to do this month, well, we have you covered here at the It's in Queens podcast. That is where Rob Mackay comes in. He's with the Queens Economic Development Corporation and the Queens Tourism Council, and each and every week, he highlights some of the more exciting events that are happening in Queens. Here's this week's report.
Hi, Jeff. We have another tremendous weekend. In fact, this one has 25 great possibilities, but I can only choose one, so I'm going to go with the historic Holiday House Tour this Sunday, December 8th from noon to 4 p.m. Hosted by the Queens Historical Society and Con Edison, this 37th annual, yes, it's now in its 37th year, this 37th annual event basically encourages people to visit and enjoy holiday activities and things like eggnog at 5 different landmarks in Flushing. That would be the Bound House, the Kingsland Homestead, the Lewis Latimer House Museum, the Quaker Meeting House, and the Volker Orth Museum. Patrons can visit all 5, or they can visit 1 or 2 or as many as they want, and a free van will be circulating the whole time. All of the places will be decorated as they were historically. So the Quaker Meeting House will be ready for a Quaker Christmas. Kingsland will be British. Volker Orth will be German. And I should also mention that inside they will be offering, for example, typical German cookies and other stuff that's taken during the holiday, and probably playing music. So it's a chance to take a step back in time and enjoy a whole bunch of activities at really beautiful, special, historically significant landmarks in Flushing. That's it, the historical Holiday House Tour on the December 25th. Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to be on it, too. I'm going to be hanging out at Kingsland for a while. All right? Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Rob. That's just a few of the things that are happening in our borough, and the place to go to discover and explore everything that's on the horizon is at the It's in Queens website, and that website address, which is so easy to remember, is itsinqueens.com. And by the way, since we focused on economic development during this episode, I want to tell you about a place you can go to learn more about business-related news here in Queens and opportunities that could help your business or friends or family members. You need to head right over to the Queens Economic Development Corporation's website at queensny.org. And when you're there, sign up for their newsletter. Also sign up for the It's in Queens newsletter too, because that way you get notified right in your inbox about opportunities. And when you visit any place in Queens, snap a photo or two, share them with us, and make sure to use the hashtag #It'sInQueens when you post on Instagram or on X, because your photo could become our photo of the week. I'm your host, Jeff Simmons, and that's it for this week's It's in Queens podcast.